So this meeting is our first one for this year, first Zoom. We're going to go over record books, the unmounted lesson plans, and a little bit of the barn plan, which only applies to our HA group, which those would be the people that are going to pop in later. So for the record books, it looks like if your name your next rating into the chat box, we'll do that at every meeting, even though I know where you guys are at, just to make sure that I cover all the right stuff. But it looks like we just have our Denise, I think your granddaughter is D level, and then Greg and Susie are at the HB level. So we'll just go over a little bit of both of those. And I'll share my screen so that we can find them on the website as usual. And I think I've mentioned this in previous, especially for those that are watching this, had been part of our thing last year. It's a little bit of a repeat. That you can't save from the website unless that's changed. So it's a good idea too to try to find some way on your own Word document to kind of document that stuff. Unless you have super neat handwriting. So I'm going to go ahead and screen share and show you from the website how to get to the record book area. Just give me a minute here. Stop my video. Okay. So as you log in, it'll show your profile or whatnot. Record book for me, I just go to the search bar. There's a lot of different tabs and ways to get to different things on the website. For me, this is easiest. And I see the chat box right now. So if you guys have questions, just pop off of mute and ask the question. Otherwise, I'll wait till I get back off, stop screen sharing. So here, after you search record books, there's the C level and the D level. I'm just going to click on the C level. Both of them are the same, except for the C level has additional pages, which they have it. So each record book page indicates which rating level it's for. So for at the HB level, you'll be using all the pages. And as you go down, you have to do less. But you'll click on record book. They have also the record book progression, which gives you extra information on that. So all of these things should be filled out for the HB level. The biggest thing that I hear that comes up as issues is either the totals are not included at the end of each page for the expenses. So I'm going to kind of scroll down and to get into that portion of the record book for us. Can I move this in a smaller? Let's see. Yep, so your totals at the bottom. Actually, you can fill these in, but I don't believe that you can save this. And wrong, that could be here. I have not personally used this format to fill anything out, so I'll test it. Adding the totals, and then especially in the board area where it says like showing and trimming, board expenses or extra expenses, things like that. Here, feed and board. If you board your horse, it's important to make sure, adding some people in here. It's important to make sure that from the record book that you don't just put board $600. You do pay that, but it's important to indicate what is included in your board. So does that include all your hay, grain, and supplements, or does it just include hay and grain? And it's good to also kind of list, if you know, and just this is good knowledge, how much hay and grain your horse is going through in a month's time. So that is stuff that you can indicate in the board area. And I type in here because I can show you in here. So you can type in board $600, and then maybe you say covers 50-pound bags of Calm Ultra, and it's worth a, which could look anywhere. It's probably, depending on the size of your horse, could be amount and turned out, or during summer and winter, obviously that changes as well. So I'm just going to say maybe 15 that amount of time. And that's all it covers. So then I'm also going to be putting in, I purchase my own supplements so I can add those things into this space too. Or there's also an others expense area, either place that would work out to add that in. Income is an optional page. Use that if you want to, and if not, you can take it out. It does not need to be put in there. And then they have the financial summary at the end. Make sure this is totaled at your rating. So this is covering the C2 and up, which C2, HB, actually it's C1 and up, but the C2 and the HB go all the way through and fill in all of this. As far as organizational stuff, I prefer that when I'm looking at these that it looks nice, and I use say typed, but if you're not going to type it, like for the things like feed and board, things in going, like using this as a working record book, make sure that it's neat. You type the beginning pages, things that don't change, and then have these pages handwritten, like I said, just super neat so that they can be read and looks professional, especially the farther you go up in the ratings. That is how, and that's how I organize this, putting it in a 3-ring binder. You can put it in the little protector sleeves, or just leave it as like hole punch, and then adding a bunch of additional things into the record book. So when you're turning this in, not to have like all your dressage tests in there, or extra paperwork or anything like that. Your record book should just be the record book. And then if you have, for each rating, obviously you have different letters, lesson plans and things that you add, and you can either put that in a pocket, have it in a separate pocket folder, that everything is just neat and easy to get to. So just because this is mostly our upper level group, so your C2, you have to have 9 months of records, the H 12 months, and that does not have to be the horse that you're currently riding. So that only applies to the C2, but you have to have your record book for your C2 for the horse that you bring if you're borrowing. So it could be your own horse that you may not be taking to the actual certification. Does anyone have any questions about record books? I'm going to go back up to the top to make sure I didn't miss anything that I thought we should talk about. I think the other main thing that is often confused, the conditioning portion and how to properly fit out. So here we're looking at the conditioning page. activity. So you can put dressage, jumping, trail riding, actual like conditioning, like trot sets or something like that. That would go in here, how many men with and times per week. And then your changes are going to be things like, obviously we're not going out doing trot sets on hills in the middle of the winter, so that you would change that here and indicate changes. And that's just important for us to keep track of anyway. I often keep all the things that I'm doing or the rides that I'm doing throughout the year. I just have a calendar. Either I print off a page like a blank calendar or just a yearly calendar and keep track of all the stuff. That way, when you're going back to update your record book, if you're not using it as like a work, it's easy to get the dates correct, and then you don't have to like try to go back and like figure out, because often that's a lot harder and things get kind of messed up as far as in your year time as well. If dental procedures doesn't like come into your time, I always put the last date done, even if it's not within the 12 months. Something every box as far as like dental procedures, worming, that kind of stuff. So if it doesn't fall within your time, just put the last date that it was done to show that that is being done on a routine basis. Feed changes and feed. Again, there may not be any feed changes, but if there are, that be something that maybe you keep track on your calendar throughout the year. Here's where you enter in your diagram of stable and turnout areas. I would do this on a separate paper and put it in your record book, or you could probably do it on the computer and somehow digitize that to put it on here as well. So that's all these extra areas for your C2 and up. So you upper level member, this is where you're going to fill that kind of stuff in. History. I would make sure to keep that to a page. I've seen some where they do, where it's very long, and I would just do a brief. It says brief description, so just one page in your record book there. So that is pretty self-explanatory on the record book front. Like I said, it's pretty easy to find there. I just went to the search bar at the top and typed it in. And that's the easiest way. I would just jot that down as a note for your, another way to get through to it through the website, but that's the easiest. Okay. All right, so I'm going to stop screen sharing for a second so I can make sure. Any questions on record books? This is going to be a fairly brief overview of these things because you're just, we want to get on the page starting to work on these, so that when we come up to our certifications, that's scrambling at the last. This is a good winter activity to start. And most of you guys should already have these pretty much wrapped up or have started them long ago at the beginning of your, when you have to start using the records, and you just keep building on them. Okay. All right. So that is record books. And like I said, the most handout ones are just very neat and organized. Pretty much there's no right or wrong information as long as it's all filled in. It's mostly just making sure that it looks complete, and you've included all your information and that's in organized fashion. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the lesson plans, and then we'll up on the BARD plan, if we even have anyone on here that applies. It's kind of a long, lengthy conversation too, so we won't waste time on that. All right, so lesson plans. The reason I wanted to talk about first off in our first meeting is that we have a whole few months here of instruction going on within our clubs, and the C2 HBs and H, they all have to teach within the club, and I believe actually the C1 has some requirement for assisting. So we want to make sure that we have some good lesson plans to go along with those lessons that we're presenting to our club level instruction. And also, after we're done talking about this, I'm gonna, winter weekend is coming up, which is gonna be either the first or second weekend in March. I think that they could potentially push it back. In my original email, it says the first weekend, but it might go back to the second. If you're going for your HB, I highly recommend that you teach at winter weekend, and they've asked me to gather up the member instructors for that event. So if you're free and available, we're going to have we're going to keep it around 6 members teaching at that. And I think we can also pair up. So if 2 of you would like to work on the same lesson, we can do that as well. But we'll have 6 upper level members teaching the D level members at winter weekend, and it's just going to be a 1-day event. So we'll set up a sign up for that. So there's a very slight chance that if things are looking like in person's not going to be a great idea, then we'll switch it to virtual. But as far as I know, it's full steam at winter weekend will be happening in person. And the details on that will come out here as soon as they confirm the date. All right, so I'm going to go back to screen share, and we'll talk a little bit about the lesson plans. So from your profile, when you log in, you can click on instruction and then lesson plans, which takes you to the main page of lesson plans. And these are where you're going to find lots of examples. So we'll look at a couple. You can make your own lesson plan as long as it follows and has all of the pieces of information from letting people in. As long as it has all of the information that is listed on the rubric, which is, I will show you that as well, where you can find that. So here, plans, unmounted, horse management lesson plans, mounted lesson plans, and discipline lesson plans. And those are basically just, the discipline lesson plans are mostly like, they have it separated out into like dressage and show jumping type plans. So we're going to click on unmounted lessons. And they have a whole host of unmounted lesson plans that you can choose from to look at. Obviously, you don't want to choose in one of these for your actual rating. But these are good things to kind of look at as examples of what are some good examples of Pony Club approved lesson plans. So I'll just click on one. I was looking at eyes and vision is one of them, and I'll show you where to get the blank lesson plan of this as well. So you can see they have like the whole like these are all things that are included in the group. Say like make sure that you note the topic, the level, education, making sure that it's specific. That was one comment that was new to us this year as far as creating the lesson plan, is that they wanted it to be one level. So before we would say you can, it's a D2 lesson plan, but then always kind of throughout mentioning, well, if you have someone that is not quite up to the D2 standard or who is exceeding, then you kind of continue to add those through. And that does not seem to be what they're looking for. They want you to be very specific to teach to the D3 standard if that's what you're teaching to. If you are teaching in person, obviously we get D3s that are much older, know all the information. So it's good to have in your back pocket some ideas to make your lesson interesting for that older or more experienced D3. So when we're writing these out though, and for your certification, especially those ones that you're just stick in the pocket, like the mounted lesson plans that the HBs have to have, but they don't teach, you're just going to pick to have in the level certification slot, and you make sure that your instruction meets that level of certification. You just fill in all of these things. So this is unmounted, so they don't have an arena size. They list their equipment. Your time for your unmounteds are anywhere going to be 10 and 20 minutes. That's pretty standard. For your HB rating, it'll be a 15 to 20 minute lesson. I made sure to include references, and the safety concerns really only applies to the mounted lesson plans. There, jot this down too. Make sure that you take a look at the safety handbook that they have for, it's on the web. I remember myself a note, and I will send it and attach it onto the follow-up email for this lesson, because I'll send you some examples of lesson plans that were done by our HBs from this past year and some of the comments that they may have received. I will also attach the safety handbook, but that's where you would look to make sure, like, if we're going out on cross, all riders have an appropriate, like, jump vest or
Not now.
The jumping vest.
Not now.
So,
No, I took my headphones off. They can't hear me now. Get off my.
okay. So that's, we'll just fill in those safety concerns. Is for most of the mounted, unless you have some crazy unmounted instruction plan, or if you're using a horse for your unmounted lesson, you could make sure that everyone has proper footwear, things like that, or if you're going to be in the barn. Then you move on to your lesson procedures. The more detail you can put in, the better. And they also want to see what they call scripting, what they in this lesson plan. That's the quotations and italics. So you're going to write in your lesson plan what you're going to, or most likely, obviously we know when we end up teaching, we go a little bit off the script. But this is like you're working through what you would be teaching, and they want to see what it is that you're going to be saying. They, in the lesson plans, they break it down into the different parts. So that makes it pretty easy for you guys that are making a lesson plan to look at this type of a template or already made lesson and kind of adapt it to your lesson plan. They break it to like the parts. So kind of your introduction, talk about what you're going to be teaching, check in with students and make sure you know they already know. So you're not teaching them something that they already know. This is where you're just going to want to make sure in your back pocket that you have some extra questions to ask, or tools and tricks to make it either more challenging or easier depending on the students that you have in front of you. the body of the lesson, so your demonstration and in discussion. So that should be the biggest portion. That's where you're doing the bulk of your teaching. And then application of the activity, that's where you have the hands-on or you ask the questions. So the demonstration discussion is you kind of giving the students the information, and the application, the activity is you having the students give it back to you. And then they do actually have a space here that says additional ideas of time. Like I said, this summer, a group that we had done their testing in Kentucky said that they were pretty strict on wanting it to be one rating level. And my hope is that next month we actually, when we get into the conditioning plans and things like that, I'd like to get a national examiner on the Zoom with us to go over conditioning plans, any of those kind of questions where they can kind of give us a little bit of insight on any secrets, I like to of doing the lesson plans and things like that. We go into this year with these certificates that we are up to date on all of that information. And then keep doing is the conclusion. So that's where you just ask if there's any questions or ask what they've learned today. You get kind of a check-in to make sure that someone you get a takeaway. It seems to be that a lot of examiners like you to ask, like, what is one new thing that you learned or one thing you didn't know before coming into this lesson? Those are great questions to ask. All right, so that was an example of just one unmounted lesson plan. We're just going to focus on the unmounted lesson plans today, like I said, because we're kind of moving into a season clubs where us as lower level members would be teaching the lower level members. And these are tools to help get us organized so that when we're going into teach that we're prepared. So to answer the question of where do I find a blank template of that lesson plan. So if you went up to instruction, you went to lesson plans and like on management lesson plans or anything like that, the sidebar here has quick links and you're going to click on instructional resources. I hope that's on the member pages too. But that is where I thought yes, they in the instructional materials lesson plans, which is the middle column. It says provided template to assist you. You can click on that and print it off and use that to write in, or it does not let you type into this. You should always present your lesson plans typed at a rating. So that's kind of like a non-negotiable. The record book is preferable to have typed, but if you have very neat handwriting and you use it as a working record book, I can see an argument for using it, having it handwritten, especially since it's hard to continuously keep printing off your record book every year. The lesson plans must be typed. You can also make your own as long as it includes all the information that is required. So how do you know is the right information? There is rubrics. So now we're on the website. You're going to go certifications, and you're going to find these under the national level certifications. HB. I'm going to look at that one. So I'm going to click on HB. I clicked on the standards of proficiency, which then on the far right column has the checklists. And you're going to look at the HB Unmounted Lesson Plan checklist or mounted, depending on what you're writing. And these have all of the bits and pieces that you need to include. I'm not sure that some examiners actually use this rubric. I don't know that they all do, but it says exactly what was on that other. State your topic, the objective, candidate rating level, length of time of lesson, all that kind of stuff is listed in here. Brief written script includes, and then it includes all those things that was on the previous lesson plan that we just looked at. The bottom of this just talks about the actual teaching portion. So for the HBs, when you teach your 15 to 20 minute lesson or whatever, this is what they're looking for. So basically, they're just making sure that you're addressing all of the portions that you included in your lesson plan. So this is something that we'll practice, is filling out this this checklist for each other through this step. We're going to focus a lot more on being able to do some club level teaching and the lesson plans and getting really comfortable with that. Let's see here. Okay. Again, when you're looking at that sidebar, so they have the mounted lesson plan checklist, unmounted lesson plan checklist, and they also include those for the HA, which is just below that. Let me see. And as far as go ahead and stop screen sharing for a moment. If any questions about the lesson plans, you can either pop them into the chat or ask them now. I'm just going to check real quick on our C2 if I have that up. I'm just checking the C2 to make sure that I cover the teaching portion for them. So those that are taking the C2, you don't bring a lesson plan. You just bring a letter from your DC stating that you assisted in simple unmounted instructional activities. A minimum of 4 teaching prior to the test is recommended. So you'll be asking your DC for that information or for that letter prior to your rating. So you want to make sure that you give them plenty of time to write you a personalized, nice letter, and that you get all of your hours teaching in. And then just at the test, you'll assist a D1 or D2 member prepare for their turnout. So that is your teaching portion. Can you use a pre-made record book for your HB, or are you expected to make your own? You can use the pre-made record book. The only thing was that I didn't think that you could actually save it from the website, which is why people tend to make their own, or at least make their own grid pages for the offenses and things like that, or procedures. So like your vaccines or farrier appointments, you can make those in a separate Word document and type and print and always saved. And then some of your other pages don't usually change. Always keep those kind of the same, if that makes sense. I think we've had a mix of those going to the HB their own, or if they've used portions of the pre-made record book. Okay, is there any questions about lesson plans? Right. I think, all right, so what I wanted to also talk about and is what to, in creating your lesson or picking a topic. I also, in the follow-up emails, will send the document that I've used forever on choosing a topic. I'll just send it out and you guys can kind of browse through that. When choosing a it's important to pick something that is your age or could teach to multiple levels or make it a little bit more difficult or easier depending on the students that you have. So for example, teaching the letters of the dressage ring, if that's all you have prepared, to already know that information, then it's really hard to kind of adapt that to make it more difficult. I am sure there are ways you can think about it as far as talking about maybe different figures in a dressage test or things like that. But that's a little bit more difficult to kind of make more challenging or easier depending on your members that you are teaching. One that's super easy is like leg anatomy. So you could always do the exterior part of the leg, or you can go all the way in. And usually you can teach all levels with that topic in particular. So it's important on picking something that you know that if, especially for you guys that are taking the HB, if you show up to the HB and maybe you have to teach group adults that are acting like they're D2s, it's still helpful that you can kind of give them some information. It makes it a little bit easier as an instructor when you know that you're teaching your people something new. It's not information that they've already heard before or makes it hard to get a lot of feedback. So that keeping that in mind too, like I said, if you're taking the, for sure the that are going to be taking their HB this year are ones that we want to thinking about topics for winter weekend and hopefully signing up on here and you'd like to teach at winter weekend, make sure you can put that in the chat or you can send me an email later for more information about it. But we're going to be working towards that because that's the beginning of March and we want to make sure that we have on board to, so we want to have 6 topics taught by our upper level members at winter weekend, and that will be excellent practice for the HB. So again, all right, so is there any questions about record books or lesson plans for the C2 and up? And or if there's one questions as far as any of the 2 topics go, I can answer those as well.
I missed when you were talking about that.
The record books?
When you're doing the C2,
The
I need to hear
C2.
about that.
So
Yeah.
the C2, so C2 record book is 6 months of rec, and that, like I said, you can find on the website to fill out. And you can just continue it from your one record book. So it continue on. So from whatever you had to have for your C1, you just continue to add on to that, which makes it easy.
Okay.
I think there are an additional page or 2 that you might have to add in that was not mandatory for your C1 that you now need for your C2.
Okay.
And for C2 teaching, what is here? Let me check back on my. That's where you just have to, in your 4 hours of teach, and helping with unmounted instruction. So your DC would a letter saying that you did that, and you would include that with your record book at your C2 rating.
Okay.
All right. So are there any other questions based on those? If not, I am on barn plans because wait, we do have Emmy on here. Emerson's gonna take her HA. So I will briefly go and plan. So when you move on your A, you no longer have to have a record book. You have a barn plan. So is a kind of plan that you make for a facility that you would run. So it does not have a real place. It's like all the money in the world. If you had all the money in the world and all the property and the place, the perfect place, what kind of barn would you build? And the amenities that you would include in that property. So I'm gonna go back and show a little bit of that before we. Okay. So right from just the HA test sheet, and I'll talk a little bit about this, and I'll show on the website where it is too. So finds the point, what you need to include in your stable farm and management plan. This is going to be a binder, just like you would do like your record book, and then you also include drawings, of which you can do just on computer paper, nicely drawn, or you can get big sheets of like texture style paper, and you can put them in a roll, which is what we've done in the past, and that makes it super nice. And if it's something you're really into and it's fun, I go doing that. All right, so going back to the Pony Club website, I'm going to navigate myself to figure out where that is. National tests, HA test, standards, and then have your checklists on the side. So then you're going to scroll down to the rubrics, which is where they have a stable management, farm design, and plan rubric. So this very detailed lays out each of those requirements and then what would exceed, meet, and then does not meet standards. So they're pretty clear. And like I said, there's no amount of money or budget that you have to make for this. It does say up at the top, candidates will design, present, and prepare to discuss a detailed outline of a hypothetical facility. Like I said, this is not based off of a real place, although you could, if there's some place you have in mind, and then maybe make some kind of tweaks, because no place is perfect. And then a horse management plan for the care of 5 to 10 horses with safe and efficient system based on graphical best management practices. So when you're choosing your location, you're going to know a little bit about the area, and zoning, that you have to look into those types of things, and also the materials that you have available in that area. And it does say present to the examiners a binder containing the items. So like I said, these are all going to be kind of in a binder type thing, and you can have your drawings separate, but make sure it's not too difficult to manage. Excuse me. So going down the side, that just it pretty much lays it out pretty straightforward. You have to include things like poisonous plants in the area, so that's why choosing a location, it's important to note the location, because things like that vary from location to location, and even there are plan too. That also varies from location to location. And yeah, so it basically is a theoretical plan. You still have to include things like your parasite management, daily facility care routine, pasture management routine. There's some things that are kind of similar to what the record book covers, but now you're kind of bringing it into a whole management plan of multiple horses. Um, Emergency plan, you do have to, it says it in here, but you have to include an quarantine area. That was one thing that Andy got messed up on his when he had to do this. When I did this, we just did a record book for mine, and then when Andy did his, it was the barn plan. But you do have to have an area where you can quarantine horses, and it says that in here specifically. I think it says it up here at the top. Specifically, but that was something that it's a drawing of the entire facility. So the third column down, it says location of isolation stalls and quarantine area, which is not common. And we don't often have places around here where we have, you know, that's specified for quarantine area. So you can think about that when you're designing your plan. So going forward, since we're just kind of starting the conversation about these things, feel free to email or send either your record books or plans or anything like that to have them checked. Or if you have questions as you're starting them, we can kind of keep having the conversation as we go down the road. But this was get kind of talking about, since it's the winter time, this is a good time to start kind of our book work per se and get this kind of stuff written down. The other thing that then we'll be kind of talking about as far as a required item to bring is going to be your conditioning schedule. That is one thing that last year it seemed like a lot of the members that took the test had trouble with. I guess that's where here in our education program we fell through. So that is one of the things that I wanted an NE to talk to us about, to fill us in on working for the plans, so that we can go into this prepared. That conditioning plan is all needed if you're going to apply Chestnut scholarship, which you have to already be a C2 member and applying for a HB3 or up test. I'm going to talk more about that on Saturday for the website walkthrough. I can continue to send out more information. So if you are already a C2 and taking a national level test this year, you can for the Chestnut Ridge Scholarship, which can be up to $400 to help you pay for your testing or prep. But you have to turn in your conditioning schedule with that application, which is due on March 1st. All right. So does anyone have any other questions? That's all I have to say for tonight. We were just kind of going over those basics so that we can get to working on those individually and start checked. And you guys can start teaching. So I'll send out like a list of some ideas of, but again, if you would like to teach at winter weekend, we'll give priority to people taking the HB, but we'll probably not fill all those spots with those who are taking it. So if you're interested, you can send me an email or in the chat and I'll write your name down and we'll get together to figure out a topic. Okay. All right. Well, if there's no more questions, thank you guys for the first meeting. And Saturday, we're going through site walkthrough. it's gonna basically what that's gonna cover. We actually did one last year, so there's a recorded session. It's gonna go through how to find all the kind of find things through the website. So that's what that will be. It will also be recorded. Next week, we're gonna talk about the digestive tract. And that will be on Thursday at 7:30. And I will send out a email reminder about that. So, all right, I'll stick on for a couple extra minutes if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, we're good to go. So, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.